Good afternoon, passengers. Welcome to Martel Air. My name's Amanda, and I'll be your pilot for today. We're just beginning boarding for flight number 28 from Canberra to East Sail. So grab your seats while I finish up the last steps of the pre-flight inspections of this DeHavilland Caribou, named the Caribou, the workhorse of the Martel Air fleet. Before engine start checklist. Parking brake handle set. Confirm. Yes, horizontal is set. Forward panel. External light switches are off. Warning light switches are set to bright. DC generator switches on and guard. AC inverter switch is off. Boost pump switches are off. Fuel tank selector normal. De-icing switches are off. Oil dilution switches off. And prop feather knobs off. Overhead panel. Carpet levers cold. Flaps up. Ignition switches are off. Taxi lights off. Landing lights off. Prop levers propeller systems. Lever on the throttle cluster are not active. Let's just fix that quickly. There we go. Thank you. Prop. Max increase. Mix levers. Idle cutoff. Gust lock handle is locked. Landing gear handle is down. Aft electrical panel. Circuit breakers are in. Cargo door switch is off. Before engine start checklist complete. Good afternoon, passengers. The weather today is sunny with a little bit of wind, and we'll be cruising at an altitude of approximately 10,000 feet, flying over the southern areas of New South Wales and the eastern areas of Victoria en route. Your cabin crew today is me, assisted as always by my co-pilot, Wing Commander Lamington. And your emergency exits are located to the back of the cabin where you entered the plane, to either side of the large cargo door. I also have a multitude of doors up here by me, and if you see me leave, please follow me quickly. Our in-flight catering services are provided by our wonderful passengers, so hope you packed something interesting. We also have a coffee machine in the back of the plane near the cockpit door for those who'd like to support the channel and Wing Commander Lamington's dog treats habit. Engine start checklist. Right hand engine battery switch on. Throttle lever cracked open. Right hand boost pump to normal. Master start switch. Now let's just see if these. Oop. No. new accessories panel that does some things it's not supposed to. Right hand boost switch on. Master start switch on. Prime switch right. Prime switch off. Mix lever to auto lean. Start switch right. And right hand ignition switch on. Nope, missed it. Okay. Start and ignition. There we go. Master start off. Throttle lever set for 800 RPM. Mixture auto rich. Right hand booster pump off. Oil pressure above minimum. Check. Left hand engine. Battery switch is on. Throttle lever crack open. Left hand boost switch normal. Prime switch left. Master start on. Prime switch off. Mixture lever set. Start switch left. Left ignition on. Master start switch off. Throttle set for 800. Left hand boost off. Oil pressure above minimum. Check. Engine start checklist complete. We're now ready for departure, so please fasten your seatbelts and turn off your devices apart from those used to watch this stream. Thank you for flying Martel Air. We hope you don't die. Okay, after start checklist. Throttle levers are set for 1000. AC inverter main. Panel lights set. Compass alignment. Okay, so we are facing ahead past 21. Yeah, past 21. Excellent. Drop checklists on the floor. Check. Pilot compass setting to slave. Pilot compass nav source set to GPS. GPS system. Set and loading. Origin and destination set. Check. And GPS position is loading. Hydraulic system pressure approximately 2000, check. And brake pressure. Brake pressure is on one of these pedals. Or is it that one? Check. Ah, system hydraulic, brake hydraulic. Check. With a handle in the way. Ah, the manual start handle. Engine run-up checklist. Area around and behind aircraft. Let's go to the external cameras. and back to the inside. Parking brake handle set. Mixture levers auto rich. 1200 RPM checks. Throttle levers to 1200. Oil temperature at least 40 C. Oil temperature is 40 C. 40 C. Check. Flaps lever to a full extension. And back to the external camera. And confirm full extension. Flaps lever up. And pitot heat switch on. 1900 RPM checks. Gust lock handle unlocked. Throttle levers set for 1900. Prop levers minimum decrease. Prop RPM to approximately 1200. Check. Max increase returns to 1900. Check. 2200 RPM checks. Throttle levers for 22. Manifold pressure approximately QNH. Check. Thrust left and right match. Check. Weather system checks not required. Throttles to idle. RPM approximately 600. Check. And gust lock handle locked. Engine run-up checklist complete. Before departure taxi checklist. Rear cargo door. Closed. Ramp and cargo switches off and guard. Cargo switch off. Cabin lights on. No smoking lights on. Fasten seatbelt lights on. Cockpit cabin heating not required. De-icing. Let's see here. External temperature is approximately 14. Not required. Flaps lever is up. Wing and tail lights is that's the anti-collision on. Taxi lights on. Taxi clearance. Ground, Martel 28 with information Yankee, request taxi takeoff, south departure. Taxi 2 and hold short, runway 35, using taxiway Charlie, Bravo, November, Martel 28. Taxi clearance check. Parking brake handle. Release. Before departure taxi checklist complete. So, let's see if the engine reversers would like to play nicely with us today. keep going a bit. And this, of course, is where the control setup gets a little bit difficult, as I do not have the option to pull the levers backwards. I in fact have to hold down another button on the other hand to make them stay in reverse. But there we go. And now we can actually taxi forwards. That taxi reverse went a lot better than sometimes previously, because just fine-tuning what my control setup is. Unfortunately, the real setup, I would be doing some of this with my feet, and I do not have a combined rudder and taxi panel setup. Okay, final part of the before departure taxi checklist. Brake function test. Check. And returning to taxi. And of course, if I was to get particularly fancy, I would have a second throttle cluster so that I could have one lever per control per engine instead of one lever per control. But it is what it is, and what it is expensive. And hello, Qantas Link. And hello, the long-term parking. Very expensive piece of parking. And here is taxiway November, leading off from Bravo. And it seems like we have some wind wanting to kick the tail across, but it is what it is. Holding short, runway 35. Parking brake on. Before takeoff checklist, parking brake handle set, check. Altimeter QNH set. And of course, the Caribou takes it in the opposite units to what the rest of Microsoft Flight Sim likes to, which is why it is 10 something instead of 30 something or 29 something. Elevator trim in takeoff range. Set. GPS system ready. Okay, so get that brightness up. GPS system ready. Check. Carb heat levers cold. Prop levers max increase. Mix levers auto rich. Boost pump both normal. Fuel tank selector switch normal. DC generator switches on and guard check. AC inverter main check. Anti-collision lights on. Landing lights on. Engine instruments, no warning lights. Check. Fuel quantity, check. Laps lever. Let's see here. Laps to 15. Takeoff clearance. Canberra Tower, Martel 2A, ready at runway 35 for south departure. Cleared for takeoff, runway 35, Martel 28. Takeoff clearance check. Gust locks released. Parking brake handle release. And winds are 317 at 5 knots, so not too bad. Let's begin taxi. Throttle levers maximum. $70 knots. Rotate. Keeping minimum 74 for the climb. Gear up. And once again, we are fairly heavily loaded with cargo for this flight, so it is a little sluggish to take to the skies. Putting in a little bit of trim to stop that roll. And some trim for the nose. Canberra Tower, Martel 2, acknowledge continue for south departure. We are, of course, currently heading north, and we will be doing so until we have cleared at least 2,000 feet above the runway. Climb speed is 105 knots, but given Mount Ainslie just there, we are in fact going to be holding something closer to 74, if we can manage that stably, as that is our max climb speed. There we go. Noise abatement reasons, we are required to turn right to find our path to the south. And there is Mount Ainslie, which is our biggest navigational hazard. Okay, laps up. Watching the airspeed as we bring in the barn doors. A little bit more right roll trim. A little bit more nose up trim. There we go. And we start the roll to the right. And it's a big heavy bird today. going to 124.5, Martel 28. Canberra approach, Martel 28 is type DeHavilland Caribou, 5 miles north of Canberra, 4,400 feet, request clearance, transition Charlie airspace. Score 5352, Martel 28. Wing Commander Lemon, if you could enter that into the system. Cleared through the Charlie airspace, Martel 28. Continue our climb at a good rate, and there is our south path that's coming up on the GPS. And there we go. Got some traffic out to the left. Martel 28 have the Cessna Skyhawk inside. And this is why planes turn their lights on. Okay, need to hold the control button down for trim. That's a bit too much nose trim. Lovely. Oh, and engine settings. So, RPM into the METO range. Throttle is set for METO. And of course, some of that huge rolling motion is the force from those engines. Okay, taxi lights off. Confirm flight config. Check. Check. Cruise climb checklist. Throttle levers set for METO. All trim stay behaving. So throttle levers in METO range. Prop levers in METO range, mixture auto rich, airspeed aiming for 105, carb heat levers not required, no icing conditions, and landing lights off. This extra instrument panel, even though it has some mismatches, just for the way that it can do lights with separate physical switches instead of going by looking around the cockpit with the camera controls. That is a delightful addition. And hello to the one passenger who has woken up in the cabin there. Hello, my darling self-loading cargo. To 8,000 feet, which is almost to our cruise. Keeping the propellers in the METO range. Here we get to see the fact that it is a fairly lovely day in Canberra and its surrounding regions. Icy this morning, but that's always something that's going to happen. Lovely flying conditions, not too much wind, especially around the airport, which with a tail the size of a caribou's can always be a bit of a problem. And of course we are taking our time to get up to our 10,000 foot cruising altitude because we are carrying approximately 2.5 tons of cargo in the back, which makes this plane show what it can do. But what it can do is carry heavy things and get up to altitude eventually. I will have to double check our map to see what interesting things we might be encountering on our way. Having no autopilot means that the Caribou is one of those planes where you keep your hand on the controls at all times, which in a flight sim cockpit is a little bit tricky sometimes, but we will make it through. Because it loves to just start to roll out from under you if you're not paying perfect attention, which of course is a thing that it loves to punish you for. And there is 9,000 feet. And I must admit, the other thing on this is the trim wheel on the control cluster is quite handy. It's a little bit more fine-grained control than the buttons on the joystick, which is making this a lot easier. Because at the moment, I'm controlling speed with the nose trim, aiming to keep it at approximately 105, while the engines do their lovely loud job on either side of me. Let's just close that door behind us. See if that lowers the noise level at all. Whoop. And because I turned around for half a second, it tried to drop the nose on me. How rude. And here we are coming up to 10,000 feet. 1,010 feet. And as always, the feet are a weird unit of measurement, but the more important thing is that everybody's using the same unit of measurement. So, despite certain large countries that didn't like the US, and still don't, using meters internally, you do get a lot of confusion when everybody else is doing meters, and you come along trying to do feet. Everybody else is doing feet, and you come along trying to do meters. It's kind of like which side of the road is best to drive on. The side you should be driving on is the one that everybody else on the same road is driving on. Okay. And there is our 10,000 feet. Okay. Cruise checklist. Throttle levers set for cruise of manifold pressure 30. Prop levers set for cruise of 2,000 RPM. Mixture levers set for maximum rust, approximately there. Carb heat levers, not required. Carb air is still within the white band. And de-icing switches, not required. And now, the real challenge is, now that that's set, we trim the aircraft. I'm going to rise the nose from all of that lime trim we had set. There we go. And we have 179 nautical miles to go until we reach sail. And as I often do, I am enjoying the scenery of the flat with crinkly bits of some of these parts of Australia. And with Commander Lamington is watching the instruments diligently, which is probably a good idea. And there we go. Trimmed out at 10,000 feet to within a few hundred. And of course, in an Australian usage, 10,000 feet is transition altitude, where you would be switching to light levels in a flight sim, matching up to American usage. That level is at 18,000 feet, or flight level 180. But in Australia, they go down to flight level 100. And yes, flight levels are the altitude in hundreds of feet. It gives you a nice firm number to say, even though it's always, well, almost always rounded to 1,000 feet. Going to 118.8 Martel 28. Goodbye. Melbourne Centre, Martel 28, entering your airspace, 10,000 feet. And our outside air temperature gauge is outside in the air, which is very sensible if you ask me. All this stuff, let's try and mount the thermometer for outside, inside. Oh, would never go right. And confirming engine settings are okay. Throttle lever's good. Prop RPM good. Mixture's good. Roll trim slightly off. Not icing conditions at all, which is lovely. It is about -5 outside the plane right now, the joys of being at 10,000 feet. And there's that roll just trying to kick in again. And the nose, it does seem to want to pick up just slightly, so we'll trim that down a little. And I think I will turn on the heating in here, so cabin heat, we'll set that to 70 Fahrenheit, and we will set the same in the front here. Lovely, lovely, and then we look back towards the front of the plane. The cabin heating is purely for comfort and for keeping any icicles off of the cargo in the back, some of which is self-loading cargo, although it's quite quiet self-loading cargo today, so I may be going slightly mad as we continue this flight. I was originally considering trying to do this in a DC3 rather than the Caribou, but Flight Sim decided it is very much not happy with something about how the DC3 is working, so it was loading none of the textures. The thing about the DC3 is that it is another 20-30 years older than this, so all of the lovely manual stuff in this just gets more fun. And I am definitely noticing that I'm getting a lot more energy for these streams now that I've switched away from the everything is autopilot caravan and it's round trip to Australia, which we will be returning to, but some cargo flights in the Caribou I think are going to be a nice change to help me get the energy back that led to that nearly 2-month break, I think it is. Some of that was health, some of it was scheduling, and it was just the remaining days I could have been coming in. I couldn't get the energy together to do more caravan flights where everything is automated, which is fine. But now we know that that's part of what was slowing me down. I do definitely prefer these when there is somebody to talk to, but people to be talked to on the recording are also good. Hello everybody who is watching the recording. And as always, if you have requests for things for me to talk about, or flights for me to do, noting that I will be sticking to Australian settings for the most part, I am definitely keen to hear that. So as previously mentioned, the base that we are flying down to is the East Sale RAF base, so the Royal Australian Air Force base. There's also West Sale, which is now Sale Airport, but taking the Caribou to the bumpy air just here. Taking the Caribou to the military base feels more appropriate, and also, as it's the one I used to actually live on, it's a bit more personally interesting to me, although, as always happens, if you go back and look at your childhood neighbourhood of any kind, it's completely unrecognisable within 10 years if you blink. And it looks like we will be flying relatively close to Mount Kosciuszko on this flight, although, as previously explored in the flight where we circled the said mountain, it's nominally a mountain by most country standards. By Australian standards, it's the tallest mountain we have, but it's quite short. While on the more modern planes, we would be following an exactly GPS map path. The GPS system retrofitted into the Caribou is one such that it treats GPS points as if they were very long distance radio beacons. So on the instrument down just beneath the artificial horizon, we have that lovely pointer which I could set to take a nav frequency or a beacon from one of these many controls here, but is currently set to a GPS point instead. And I love that way of not replacing all of the old school dials and the very manual everything in this plane, but still letting you use slightly more modern navigation setups. And after all of that light turbulence there, the trim and altitude hold are slightly bumped. So we take it back to 10,000. Lovely. And we level. And we trim. Lovely. And we tap a little bit of roll trim. And it is, of course, always a situation that in the Caribou you get a lot of engine noises, so as none of the passengers are speaking, I love that engine. As none of the passengers are currently speaking, I can't tell if the audio mix is quite where we'd like it to be, but it seems to be holding in about the yellow band, which is about where my voice is hitting when I speak, so that's probably about right. But it is such a very pretty engine and such chonkus. We loves it. And outside air temperature is still about -5. We're approximately on course. Throttle settings are about right. Prop settings are good. Mixture levers approximately set for maximum thrust. Carb heat is just within the white band, so let's put on a little bit of carb heat. There we go, back into the middle of the band, and we've lost some thrust to that because that is how that works, which is why they're not always on. And a lovely lake here. Is that Chinderbine? Let's just check on that map. Bean. The fact that the map I have for navigating around the places that I am is also the one that's giving us the little picture-in-picture view, means that that does flicker around occasionally. But having worked out how to have the full program open and just a little square of it popped up into OBS is such a useful discovery that we've had. It means that we can actually get this working nicely. But, okay, let's see here. Carb heat is now in a nice sort of range. Oil temperatures are good, oil pressure's good, fuel pressure's good. RPM good, thrust good. Let's just double check the thrust now that we've... Yep, that's still about the right setting. Fuel is good. And one thing that I'm learning while manually trimming the aircraft to hold it just so is that sometimes it will vary up and down by a few hundred feet per minute. And sometimes that's something that you need to immediately correct before it goes weird. And sometimes that's just the natural flow of the air currents that we are over and through. And I've been looking at things for Flight Sim 2024 that's being released, and you know, I think they actually are doing a lot of upgrades to the physics engine that might actually make it worthwhile. It did feel slightly odd having a complete new version after a relatively short period. I mean, this shows what sort of gamer I am, that I consider this 2020 version to be recent. But one of the things I'm actually most excited for non-streaming usage is that they're adding a career mode, which is absolutely my jam. And we have a traffic at 2 o'clock. Just hoop across to Wing Commander Lamington's seat at about our altitude. And they may in fact be behind us now. Martel 28, traffic not in sight. And we across back to our own seat. Ooh. And there's one of those things where it just starts wanting to have a little bit of a roller coaster time. I don't know when I will be getting Flight Sim 2024. It is much as the current 2020 mind-breakingly expensive. I am that sort of gamer as well. I consider any game above $50 to be questionable. And once I do get it, I don't know how long until I switch to streaming Martel Air flights from Flight Sim 2024. I mean, one of the deciding factors will be whether I can get the Caribou without having to buy the $300 Everything Edition, and whether I can do my custom liveries without too much having to rework everything. We'll see. Flight Sim 2020 has been able to import or convert Flight Sim X planes, so hopefully I'll be able to convert the liveries for the Caravan and the Caribou. Especially the Caribou. I'm having a lot of fun in this plane right now. Even if the air currents are trying to throw me about. One of the teasers that I saw for Flight Sim 24 was that it's now essentially fluid dynamics modelled wake turbulence from every plane, rather than trying to do some generated synthetic system, which is fascinating. I can see why the performance requirements for the higher end systems, excuse me, why the performance for higher end settings are utterly insane. But between, you know, graphics, we don't really need improving unless they can do better terrain, which, I mean, I started on Flight Sim 95. Even this level of terrain's good, but like, this level of terrain is good enough to make you see the gaps and the lines and the joins, because it's an old version of big maps. Ooh, another bit of traffic, this time at my altitude. Martel 2A do not have the Diamond DA62 traffic in sight. And we've been curving a little bit to the east of our intended path. Okay, we just turn back again. And make sure we keep the altitude where we want it. And here comes the altitude. One thing that may amuse people who are used to seeing me in either the Caribou or the Caravan is that the other day, just as a personal amusement sort of flight, I tried flying the A320, and I don't know if I consider that to be flying, to be quite honest. The thing that you do in the actual cockpit of an A320 is closer to what I'm doing here at my desk than to what you do in the game that I'm playing. So having that level of automation, let's call it, separating me from the flying experience was a little too meta. Now, in terms of actually operating the planes and making everything safer, making a giant automated computer that a couple of people sit in and operate rather than fly is a lot safer and a lot better for everyone. But Martel Air is not a real-world commercial air flight service. We are video game, I'm not going to say silly just because it's a very sensible sort of time. We do sensible things here, but we're not doing it to actually get people from A to B. We're getting it's to get people through whatever chores or crafting or weird time of day they're having. If you'd like somebody to hang out and just kind of chat to. I know that I like the talky sort of streams when I'm doing crafting, especially because company in the workshop always makes things go a little bit better. I can't do any crafting while I'm flying Caribou, of course. If I was flying the A320, I'd probably have taken up knitting. And of course, at some point, I'm going to have to take the Fokker triplane out again and do a cross-country flight in that, where the navigational technology available is the compass and a clock. Maybe you can take a stopwatch with you. And visibility. Yeah, no night flights. If you need to actually navigate anywhere, and you always need to navigate anywhere, especially considering it has no lights on it. Its checklist is a single piece of paper that's actually in the in-game cockpit, rolled up in the flare gun's holster. You know, little side pocket in the holster, that is. Which is just delightful. And a really cool touch from the modding community who created that plane. I must admit, playing with some of these older, well, I mean, the Caribou is older, the Fokker triplane is utterly antique, but playing with some of the earlier stuff is actually a lot of fun for me. I won't be doing warplanes past either, you know, past about the 1930s. I think I'll put my limit for warplanes, so You won't see me doing a Spitfire. If I'm doing the DC-3, it will be in the DC-3 liveries, not in the... Was it C-47? There's a whole bunch of Douglas DC-something cargo planes that... One of them is the C-47, and I can't remember if it's the DC-3 or its successor. And I can't check that while manually flying a Caribou. This is the thing about the streams where I'm flying the Caravan and have a spare hand to, you know, go over to the second window and Google things. I don't have that option when I'm flying the Caribou. I barely have the option to check the map. Which, speaking of, let me just have a glance. So, over there, one of the kind of indistinct peaks is Mount Kosciuszko, the tallest mountain on the Australian mainland. It is thoroughly unimpressive at 2,228 metres, which is one of the reasons that we are at 10,000 feet, just to make sure that we're not interfering with any of these lovely worn down ancient mountains in a way that would lead to a cumulogranite situation. I mean, with like, this is set to live weather, and this is just what it's like over southeastern Australia at the moment. And you know, it's -5 or so outside, but that's because we're at 10,000 feet. You can see lovely flat bits, probably sheep stations. More traffic. And they do not... I really need to clean this monitor. I was feeling so good about how we managed to spot that first bit of traffic when they actually had their damn lights on. Martel 2, traffic not in sight. Always fun. I'm looking forward to seeing what the air traffic control AI is like in Flight Sim 24. That's going to be an interesting one. We've got 117. That confirms whether that was an 8 or a 0. It was an 8. So 117 nautical miles to go. We started at 194, so not quite halfway there. It's going to be one of the longest streams again, just because, to be quite honest, I felt like it. I was saying something, and then I got distracted. And this is me back on my ADHD meds. I do love a good high-resolution cockpit texture, though. And our little table of speeds for what we can do various things at. So yeah, we've got flap extension speed limits. VLE is landing gear extension. The one that just says cargo door might be the cargo door. VNO, I believe, is not over, and VMO is structural limits. You know, if we're diving and it tries to go over 165, we have to do a full engineer inspection of the plane after we land. And if we exceed 208, we might have to do a full forensic examination after we contact the ground in multiple places, maybe a mile apart. Yeah, so I'm very curious to see how Flight Sim 24 goes, it is one of those things that... Oh, more traffic. More traffic, not readily visible. Yeah, no. Martel 2A, traffic not in sight. It'll be interesting to see what is and is not changed in Flight Sim 24. I won't be buying it in the first little rush of release. We have slipped down to 9,400 feet. That's not good. It's on my Steam wish list, mostly in a please notify me if this comes on sale, and at that point I'll start doing maths. And, you know, I've decided that I'm not doing any more purchases from the Flight Sim 20 marketplace, just because you can't try to declare that one obsolete now. I might stop spending money on it. But, you know, we'll see. Looking over the specs required for Flight Sim 24, there's all sorts of fun things that I'm sure I could spend $2,000 upgrading the computer. I don't have $2,000, and if I did, I'd have other things I need to buy first, because this is what having, you know, adult finances is like. What it's like is several swear words that I'm trying not to say on stream, but you know. Honestly, the one big upgrade I want to do on this computer is actually the monitors, because I have lovely 27-inch screens that just fill the width of my desk, and in fact set the minimum width for my desk. I tried getting a smaller desk so that I would have less space to fill up via my ADHD seeing a flat surface. Turns out I'm a lot more cunning than is possible to defeat with my level of cunning. So it's layered now. At some point, I really just want to take the, you know, fairly cheap desktop on the... Like, I got a good set of sit-stand frame and desktop, and I could take the desk surface off and build myself a roll-top desk that works with that and can also, like, has some sliding panels so that it looks like a normal desk even if it's up or down. That is a hilarious and fun project that really tempts me. Oop. We are going over mountains, so it's bumpety. And look, the idea of a roll-top computer desk just utterly delights me. Because you got your standard kind of double curve roll-top desk, where the tall bit at the back is where your little cabinets for writing supplies, paper, ink, pens, all this sort of stuff go. And then the lower part, where the second little outward curve is your writing surface. But you could 100% have that top section be the monitors, and then it just kind of curves down and then out again for the keyboard, mouse, etc. section. I think that would be a really fun way to do it. Like, it would fit quite well. And it turns out, making that roll-top cover, it has so many names. The thing where it's just a whole bunch of rounded wooden slats all connected together in a way that I always found super mysterious, but means that you've got a flexible in one axis wooden panel. Turns out that's just done by attaching all of the wooden slats to a canvas backing. I can do that. Like, the big challenge would be getting the channel it runs in. I have a friend with a big CNC machine. I could get him to carve those panels for me. The rest is all pretty much within the realms of my abilities with power tools and my abilities to borrow power tools. I can't remember how this tangent started. Desk. Monitors. But yeah, so at some point I'd like to make this desk into a sit-stand, old-school roll-top desk. I don't know where to get mahogany, but I am utterly obsessed with the colour of mahogany, especially if there's, like, a dark-stained mahogany with brass fittings. Like polished brass. That part of it is just outside of my abilities, because I don't know where I'd even get mahogany. Good word, though. Mahogany. Makes me sound very white. Utterly mayonnaise. But yes, so my monitors. Pair of 27-inch monitors. Very nice. Good upgrade. They are full HD, which is 1080p. Do not go above 27 inches with 1080p. It's just at the edge of the pixels are becoming a thing again. And I survived VGA graphics. I'm not going back. So at some point, like, I can't justify it until these monitors actually start to expire, unless somebody decides to give me a lot of money, but not so much money that I have to spend it on a car. I'd like to replace them with 1440p panels. 4K I think would be a bit much. If it was 4K, I'd also need, like, new graphics card. But I'm actually pretty happy with this graphics card. As long as I've got all of the settings tweaked just so, and nothing running in the background to hog all of the memory. For those who are curious, it's an AMD RX 6600. So, you know, standard line, generation old. So it's not the upper end graphics cards or the enthusiast end graphics cards. Like, I specifically don't want an enthusiast grade graphics card because they go out of date so quickly. Like, enthusiast grade 2 years ago is probably mid-range. Oh, maybe not 2, the generations have stretched out a bit, but a generation ago, so, you know, the 3090 from Nvidia, yeah, you're better off. It's now replaced by things a generation later and several tiers down. The 80 series from Nvidia, the 800 series, or not series, sub-series, so the, you know, 4080 and the 7800, they seem to be like the maximum sensible. So that's what I call high-end. And I have loved discovering the term enthusiast grade because it's a really good descriptor for that level of product where it's not about how good it is, it's about how, you know, what it can do. It's not about what it can do, it's about how good it is. The thing that enthusiast grade graphics cards are really, really good at is high scores in graphics card benchmarking programs. I don't play graphics card benchmarking programs as a rule. Like, they're not my primary form of entertainment. I've run them occasionally, often as doing thermal tests, but yet not for the entertainment part of my life. So yes, enthusiast grade is for the people where getting a good score in those programs, pretty much sort of thing, that's their actual enjoyment. They are the sports cars in a suburban environment of graphics cards. Like, technically, yes, that car can go 250 k's an hour. Just try it and see what the cops do. There are not graphics card performance cops, but maybe there should be, just to raid NVIDIA's offices and clear things out once in a while. I also blame the enthusiast grade stuff for the ridiculous things that have been happening to graphics card prices. I'm glad that the crypto mining boom died, because that doubled graphics card prices for a while. It's also morally and environmentally unsustainable. For more crypto hot takes, just try swearing at a wall for a while and you'll basically get my opinion on crypto. AI I'm more grumpy about, just because generative AI has stolen the attention and the name from a lot of really cool things. So, as a lifelong gamer, I am a big believer in game AI, because I like game systems that respond intelligently, but not in a generative AI way, just in a, like, you need to make the behavior of the various systems, including other characters, respond to things, so that's always been what we called AI. But because it's not generative AI, and generative AI is a swear word, it's almost like, it feels like we need to find a new and less dirty name for game AI. And of course, the thing that image processing AI is actually meant for, there's a whole bunch of really good scientific applications of it, a lot of them in the biomedical fields. Image processing of medical samples to do diagnostic work, and not WebMD diagnostic work, like go through all of these pictures of cell biopsies and check for this, this, and this. That's what image processing AI is really good at, and for some reason, it's getting swept away under what's being done to just automate out the joys in life. Like, call me old-fashioned, but the rise of technology was meant to do the menial work so that we could pursue creative fields. And because some buttheads saw some money in it, we've now got people trying to make computers and robots that do the creative work so that we can do the manual work. The most creative bit of robotics in my house is Stabby the Roomba, who loves devouring all the dust and dirt from my floors, and is a wonderful pet and gets frequent pat. Other than that, I've got some app-controlled lighting, which has solved a lot of problems I had in my house, thanks to the design of the house, and thanks to my ADHD and disability stuff. So, you know, I can activate migraine mode, and the lights dim. I can activate VC mode, which turns on this light here for the VC key, and this light here for the VC fill, and the main room light goes to a good floodlight fill for the back side of the lighting. And it also has a fade from, you know, nice cool white lighting in the daytime, gradually getting dimmer and more yellow as the evening goes on to help my sleep. My bedside light comes on at 7:30 at minimum brightness and slowly goes up from there to help me get up in the morning, which is useful. And I mean, the one thing with the voice control side of it, I have installed a voice control thing. It has basically only got access to the light. The thing where the voice control comes in handy is the dining room light. which is one of the, the dining room, lounge room, kitchen is the main central space of the house. The kitchen and dining room lights are as far from the kitchen and dining room as is possible, and like you have to walk around a little half-height wall that is the entire front wall of the kitchen to get to the kitchen light switch. I've not done the kitchen light yet. It's for the next time I can afford another one of these globes. The globes are kind of expensive, but just being able to do voice control for those lights that are utterly utterly ridiculously placed switches. $25 a light bulb is a lot cheaper than having somebody come in and install a new switch panel. Okay, that was an interesting little bit of turbulence there as well, because mountainy. And Wing Commander Lamington keeping a watch very helpfully. Thank you. And let's just check all the instruments. Okay. Good. That's good. There's a good power settings. Continuous fiddling with the trim, as is the just absolute situation with this plane. All of that looks good. All of that looks correct. And it's a little bumpy. If I did have a much higher performing computer, one of the things I think I might look at doing is adding an external camera, because Flight Sim will actually let you add a second... Actually, no, you can't quite do that. Flight Sim will let you add a second render window, but it's the same view but with an offset. And put that on, second monitor or something. So, in the absolutely insane cockpits that some people have, what you would do is that from this view, I could set it up so that the second window is Wing Commander Lamington's view. Or, if I had too many monitors, I could have this view as its own monitor and have that off over here, just so that, okay, frame wise it would be over here, so that I could have a window, a physical computer monitor that is looking out that window while continuing to look ahead. If you go particularly mad, what you do is you have it so that it's not rendering the cockpit of the plane, and you just have a head view, two 45 views, two 90-degree views, possibly even an up view, and maybe a monitor down here that is your instrument panel. Or maybe you just have, much like I've got the two nice little Logitech Saitek panels here that are in fact bolted to the top of my throttle quadrant, because it's a really good firm way to mount them. Yeah, you can spend $3,000 on Logitech hardware and just build an entire physical cockpit for Flight Sim. Or you can make your own hardware and actually map all of the switches and instruments of your favorite aircraft. I have been tempted to try, I will admit. I'm not quite that mad yet. Okay, so we've got 68 nautical miles to go until we get to sail. And some lovely buffeting. Unfortunately, the buffeting is not a buffet, but we will make do with things as they are. Our fuel levels remain good, about 1,200 pounds per tank. Throttle thrust figures are looking about right, throttle's good, RPM's good. Roll trim is a constant headache. So this is one of the longest streams that I've done without somebody to talk to in the chat, so it is a fairly interesting little situation. But we just get to see my mind slowly unravel. And I know that my usual #1 passenger self-loading cargo Piney Tree will hopefully be watching this on the recording. Hello Piney Tree, if you have made it this far. We are taking a good load of heavy cargo down to RAF-based East Sail, while I continue to wish that I had cleaned up the computer monitors a little bit more, because when I get yet another please look out for traffic, 10 o'clock to 9,000 feet. Now, I am looking for a tiny, possibly 1 pixel speck, and there are a lot of tiny, approximately the size of 1 pixel specks on my screen, and I don't know how they got there, but they're on the screen, not on the display. Martel 2A, traffic not in sight. So, with our approximately 130 knots airspeed, we are doing approximately 150 knots ground speed, which tells me we've got a little bit of a tailwind, which is lovely. I was talking about the multi-screen thing that you can set up. So, on Flight Sim 20 as it stands, they can be different angles from the same view for doing the multi-monitor cockpit setup. They can't be different views. I discovered this when I was trying to do the Fokker triplane airshow video. Going to 125.2 Martel 2. Melbourne Centre, Martel 2A, DeHavilland Caribou, 22 miles southeast of Yankee Bravo Romeo Alpha, at somewhere around 10,000 feet if the aircraft will hold still and bring your airspace. Squawk 3233, Martel 28. With the 1 London, if you could enter that, thank you. And once again, we get the what happens if I get distracted by 7 things while also trying to hold the altitude at 10,000 feet, which is one of the reasons we're at 10,000 feet and not closer to the ground. So yes, as I was saying, when I was setting up to do the Fokker Triplane Airshow episode, I tried to make it so that we could have the external view of what the plane was doing, because that would have made all of the here's what the various combat maneuvers look like into something a bit more interesting. But unfortunately, Flight Sim 2020 does not give you that option, nor do any mods seem to be able to manage it, which was kind of disappointing. So that's one thing that I'm hoping for in Flight Sim 24. And if it turns out that it can do that and it becomes affordable at some point, that might actually be a driving factor for me to switch to that. Because I think Like, we've got the in-flight map and the pilot cam running at the moment, but I think putting another corner as, possibly up in the top right, having that as an external view of the plane could be quite fun. I would have to work out if I was going to do that as the floating chase camera sort of thing that it defaults to, or I think it could actually be quite fun to do the mounted to the aircraft camera that we've done for the on-ground checks, as we do while getting ready to take off in the Caribou, which you do actually get on some real planes, especially mounted on the tip of the tail, which if I just... this view, though, I think having this sort of view, which does not let me re-aim unfortunately, and also the engines are quite a bit louder out here. There we go. I don't know if they became as loud for you as they did for me, but through these headphones it was quite something. But I think having that sort of view from the tip of the tail down to the plane would be quite a fun little thing to have up in the top corner. But yeah, Flight Sim 20 does not have a facility for that. Apparently Flight Sim X did, but it got dropped when the heavier rendering requirements of Flight Sim 2020 came about. So we'll see if it's back in or still out for Flight Sim 24. And if it is, that might be a thing to push me towards... I mean, I won't find that out until I've actually acquired it. But once I have it, it might be a thing to encourage me to switch the streaming over to that, assuming I can get deliveries done, because I like my plane tank. Plane painting. Okay, we've got more traffic, 7,500 feet, 4 miles, 1 o'clock. Not without your lights on, buddy. Oh, and it's a Cessna 152 as well. As in, something smaller than the cargo bay of this plane. Martel 2 did not have the traffic inside. Yes, I quite enjoy the plane painting, the design of aircraft livery. It is a fun bit of an artistic challenge, and as somebody who is specifically a digital artist, it's a really nice thing to work on. And the fact that I have an excuse for it in doing these streams, and all 3 planes that I've flown for the streams have had my own liveries applied. We worked through several versions of the Caravan livery as I, worked out how to do design stuff better. Because how it actually works is that you import the model of the plane into Blender and its texture mapping. And then what I do is use that to identify... Some of it, I will use it to directly apply stripes, especially actually the tail insignia is very hard to get without doing it via Blender, because you can just do texture painting in Blender. But otherwise, I use it to identify which region of the 2D PNG file in a specific fancy wrapper goes onto which part of the plane, and then also working out the it's 3 files, but actually 5 different images, which is fun. And work out, which bits of those go onto which bit of the plane, and then also tuning what you do with each of those. So the 3 files that you have the albedo, which is a funky way for them to have phrased it. I find that fascinating. And what the albedo texture does is it gives you the color. So that's where you do the actual painting on the paint. And then you have the normal file, which gives you the tiny scale slope at each position, so you can make it look textured without having to alter the physical shape of the plane. And there's some very complicated maths involved in that. Basically, I generate a bump map which is changes in the elevation from the surface in grayscale, and then you put it into a generator that turns that into a normal map, which is actually measures of angles rather than heights. It's all very complicated and mathematical, and kind of fun once you see what's going on. And then you have the composition map, which does a very clever thing where it's a full color PNG picture, but what it actually is it is 3 more or less grayscale images, but you store 1 in the blue channel of the image, 1 in the green channel of the image, and 1 in the red channel of the image. So red it's essentially a shadow map of, here are the things that it's called ambient occlusion. And basically here's the parts that are just pretty much in shadow normally, so it's doing less live shadow mapping, and you use that for like the bits that are under other bits and some interesting detail bits. Green is the roughness map, which is essentially the scale from full all the way to one end of the roughness map is almost just like the non-reflective surface of like a piece of canvas. Is there anything in here? Honestly, so all of the seats, the seat fabric is all the way to one end, and the other end is high gloss plastic. And the blue channel is used for the metallicity, or the metal map. And basically, fully blue is, full intensity on the blue channel is shiny metallic chrome, and fully off, like zero intensity on the blue channel, is matte plastic. So you can have a very smooth, not metallic, or you can have very rough, is metallic, like very rough chrome. They're 2 different things that compose the material, which is how you get some very cool effects. So stuff where I was playing with that, like on the icing boots on the front of the wings, it's fully not metallic, but it's fairly smooth. And so you get a lot of like bright pink, because that is full red, full blue is hot pink, or magenta, if we are being one form of technically correct. In a different set of color language, it's actually not correct. But yeah, so by making those 5 maps in 3 files, you That's how you make up to and including photorealistic aircraft liveries. I've done less on, like, it's also, all of those files I used for the cockpit interiors, the plane interiors, the co-pilot models, all of that, but I've mostly worked on the outside of planes because it's a little bit more variable plane to plane within a model. Okay, 34 nautical miles from sail. Nearly there. Yeah, so assuming that we retain the ability to do livery designs of our own, I will be switching over at some point after being able to afford Flight Sim 24. Although, given the prices on some of it, like, it's about $100 for the basic version, which I just got the basic version of Flight Sim 20, but there's all of the planes unlocked, all of the extra airports unlocked, and all of the planes released by Microsoft in the marketplace for separate purchase in Flight Sim 20. And that version is about $300. And I'm not buying that version. That version is, that $300 version, that's about the price of the new monitor I want to get. I mean, I want 2 of those because monitors have to match, but still. Okay, let's start bringing this down to, let's call it 4,000 feet. Descent checklist. De-icing switches are not required. Throttle levers and prop RPM set for cruise. Fuel boost normal. Fuel selector normal. No smoking and seatbelt lights on. Altimeter QNH set for local settings. Okay, and beginning descent. And we want about, let's go for 1,500 feet a minute, so for now. And, Wing Commander Lamington, if you could get us onto the correct frequency. Thank you. East Sail Tower, Martel 28 is 30 nautical miles northeast, descending through 9,000 feet with information light to land. Flight left traffic runway 09, Martel 28. Like we've got 8 knot winds, but mostly lined up to the runway. Ooh, that's getting a little speedy. Okay, 1,500 feet is too much. Let's go for 1,000. As we come down into thicker air, the manifold pressure comes up, which means that we pull the throttle back to maintain our cruise settings. The joys of the manifold pressure as a throttle gauge is actually a measure partially based on outside air pressure, which is why when we are doing our run-up checks, we're making sure that it matches to approximately QNH, which is about 30 when we are on the ground. But as we descend, to keep a constant manifold pressure, we slowly ease back on the throttles. And there's 5,000 feet. Okay, so that 208 knot mark is our do not exceed speed, not the 165. I need to check what BNO is. I think it's normal operations. That would make sense. But as we're doing a pattern entry, we want to get down to about 1,500 above the runway. So we will continue our descent past 4,000. And so 21 nautical miles. And should be dead ahead. Okay, and as we're entering the traffic area, landing lights on. Part of our descent is waiting for the radar altimeter to come alive. And all of that work trimming the aircraft. Now we are no longer cruising and are also doing about 165. Yeah, I'm gonna have to retrim this because otherwise I am just holding forwards constantly. Okay, so there's about 2,000 feet, and as we continue our approach in. Okay, so we are approaching from the east, so 09 will be pointing backwards away from us. So left pattern, we will be turning before we reach the runway. Okay. I think 2,800 feet sounds good. Because that puts us at about 1,600 feet above terrain, and the pattern will be at 1,000. So entering from 500 feet above the pattern is nice and polite, because that way we are not entering the pattern at the same altitude as the people in the pattern who might not be able to see us. And yes, significant nose forward trim. Wait for it to balance out. Because the speed comes back down. Attention passengers, we are now approaching sail, and the seatbelt lights are on as they have been for the entirety of the flight, which means your seatbelts should still be fastened. Enjoy this riddle and more as we come in towards landing, and thank you again for flying Martel Air. We hope you don't die. My right wrist is getting a good workout from all of this time spent actively controlling the joystick, which on the one hand is good exercise. Jokes about right hand and wrist exercises are withheld, but also I am feeling the arthritis in that wrist. I mean, I have arthritis in most of the joints, but the right wrist is the one that's been doing a lot of work today. Again, any jokes about this are in your own mind and not my fault. And if you don't get what jokes might be made, that's for the best. Okay, 9 nautical miles. And there is the lake that sail is on. And there's more lake. I'm pretty sure that's the lake that sail is on. This is where we find out whether the GPS coordinates that were entered for Yankee Mike Echo Sierra are actually accurate for this airport, and we've drifted a little high. Aha! I can in fact, I believe, see the runway. And we are more or less coming in from the opposite end. Lovely. Which means that we will join the pattern nicely lined up on our downwind leg. Okay, and checking the ATIS. Wind 071 at 8. So that is going to be a little bit of a crosswind, but ooh, there's some interesting winds over here though. So a fun fact about Sail, its previous name before being called Sail was Windy Hollow. And you know, it's a bit of a hole, but also a bit windy. And as that is East Sail Air Base, and we are approaching it from more or less the northeast, as we look past it is where we'll start to see Sail itself. And yes, that is definitely the runway. Lovely. Although which runway is that? Because we're not pointing in the direction. I think we are in fact approaching diagonal, and that is the other runway. The joys of having to do 3D effector mass. So yes, there is a Sail starting to load in. The joys of texture load distance. And yes, so that is runway 22, which is also 04. Which means that the crossing runway just here, it will be 09, so we will in fact turn and begin our downwind leg for that. And we're at about 1 nautical mile, so we will turn to enter the downwind. And checking our settings. And now that we are entering the pattern, this is where we turn due west, heading 270, and descend to approximately 1,000 feet above the terrain. A good general pattern height. Clear to land, runway 09, Martel 2. So we now have our landing clearance, even though we are still on the downwind leg, and that is fine. And the important thing to do in this situation is to not let it rush you. It is so easy to let it rush you into making the turn, but we're barely past the tip of the runway, and this thing wants a bit more of an approach. Okay, approach checklist. Landing lights on. Mixed levers auto rich. Prop levers set for 2250. Landing gear down. Flap set for 25 degrees. Stabilize. And a lot of trim down now that the barn doors are out. Prop levers to max increase. Throttle levers to maintain safe RPM. And 4 nautical miles, begin turn for the base leg. Heading should be due south. And taxi lights on. And sight to the runway, and we need to be turning onto our approach leg. Okay, and our approach speed is approximately 73 knots. That is quite the tight turn. I in fact overshot because I needed my checklists, but we also overshot the base leg. And here we go. And as we are laps 25 in a Caribou, it starts to feel slightly like it's floating. And our approach speed is 73 to 81 knots. And there's the runway, and we're nicely lined up. Altitude is about 500 feet. A little bit of crosswind correction. Ah, there's why our base leg was turned out to be too long. It's not, in fact, despite being 0.9, it is not magnetic east-west. It's off from there. This is what I get for not reading my approach charts. Okay, the speed is a little high. That's fine. The crosswind is trying to keep us off to the side. There goes a bird. Landing gear is 3 green. Back on the speed. Plenty of runway for a beast like this. This thing will land on a quarter of this, but we're going to give it a nice gentle approach and a long rollout. High and a little fast, that's fine. We have plenty of options. And beginning the flare. Floating a little. That's fine. Crosswind's pushing us across the other way now. And we're on the ground. The engines are off. And flaps up. And some gentle braking. And here's Taxiway Charlie. Get it down 20 knots ground speed, and a little slower actually, and we'll start our turn and pop it into a taxi view. Contacting ground on 127.25 Martel 28. Goodbye. And we'll continue our rollout off the runway just to make sure we're clear, but we will not enter the taxiway proper. There we go. And bringing to a stop. Okay, after landing checklist. Slow to taxi speeds, gust lock handle on. Flaps are up. Taxi lights are on. Aspirating runway landing light off. Anti-collision lights are off. De-icing is off. And taxi clearance. Bell Tower, Martel to H, taxiing to parking. Looks like it's not actually going to give us taxiing instructions, but taxi clearance H. Okay. Attention passengers, we've landed safely in Sale, and the local time is 2:32 p.m. Please remain seated until the plane comes to a complete stop at whatever ridiculous parking spot they end up giving us, because queuing for the exit in a flying cargo truck makes you look utterly ridiculous. I do love the rumble of those engines. Looks like I need to turn the load distance on some of my graphics settings back up a little bit. That may have accidentally come down a little far. One fun feature that I've noticed is that if you try and use the scroll wheel on your mouse to scroll through the menus for graphics settings, if you accidentally scroll across a slider, the scroll wheel will stop moving the window and start moving the slider. This is utterly dreadful design. And here is our parking. You know, I don't think we're going to fit down that side without taking some tails off. Let's, in fact, not go that side. I don't think that would be appreciated. Might count as an act of war, given it's a military base. But yeah, we're gonna park on the other side. I think the automated taxi guidelines might have thought they were moving something a little smaller. Given that that's the spot they're putting us into, yeah. In fact, we're going to show off what the Caribou can do. And reverse. So step one will be lining up such that we can pull it through. Okay. Now, we don't have the ability to see backwards. Let's see if one of our external cameras will give a good taxiing view. Nope. Cool, we're doing this the fun way. And we will assume, for the sake of the flight or role-playing that we're doing, that, actually, one moment. If I had that stripe there the entire time. Better. Ah, the joys of setting up the green screen. I'm just going to briefly fiddle with my control settings here. Forgive the odd bit of silence there. But, so toggle reverse is what I want on that. Not hold reverse. Let's see if that fixes things. I think it was causing problems before, which is why I reset it into hold reverse. Okay, let's see if that's going to work a little better. So, brakes. Okay, that's gone on to reverses. In fact, I did not put the parking brake on. Okay, there we go. Beep, 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 beep. Okay. And throttles return to normal. Parking brake on. Lovely. Reversed into a parking spot because they tried to make us go the other way. Shutdown checklist. Parking brake set. No smoking lights off. Seatbelt lights off. Cockpit and cabin heating systems off. Hopefully you've enjoyed being nice and warm back there. De-icing switches, including pitot heat, off. Boost pump switches off. Cylinder head temperatures below or 180. Check left, check right. Mixture levers to idle. Cut off. Engines have stopped. Ignition switches off. And the noise in my left ear is in fact another tiny plane getting past us. Rear cargo door. We will open the cargo ramp and the cargo door. We will extend the ramp fully. And we'll come down here to watch the opening. Attention passengers, this now concludes our flight from Canberra to East Sail. And we here at Martel here hope you've enjoyed your time in our... Well, it's not the tiny sky bus, as the caravan script says. We hope you've enjoyed your time in our sky semi-trailer. Please wait until the door has finished opening and you can calmly deplane in an orderly fashion. Our baggage handling services today will be provided by our wonderful passengers, so thank you for not leaving any of your luggage behind. Any personal belongings left behind as you leave the plane will be assumed to be a present to the co-pilot and enjoyed thoroughly. There is also, as previously said, the coffee machine up here by the cockpit door if you would like to support the channel and support Wing Commander Lamington's dog treats habit. Thank you for flying Martel Air. We hope you don't die. Okay. Shutdown checklist continued. Cargo door switches off and guard. Cargo door master switch off. Cabin lights off. AC inverter off. DC switches off. External lights off. And battery switch off. Shutdown checklist complete. Reset that camera. Sneak round to the door here where I've done my lovely little bit of good. Setting up of the paint scheme, including on the little bit of the cargo ramp there. And you can see why I did not take this plane through that narrow slot. But that finishes up our stream, which turns out to have been a little over 2 hours, which is not too bad for one where it's just me talking to myself and the future. So, thank you all for hanging out later, if you indeed have done so, which if you're hearing this, you probably have. And I will hopefully be around next week. Goodbye.